Welcome, everyone, to the Super Connector, where we talk about all things related to the world of influence. Everything from sales to leadership, personal branding, networking, and my personal favorite, how to win friends and influence people. Today, we have a special guest, Brett Narciso. Brett is a remote sales professional and avid networker. Over the last 3 years in his profession, he is now training and managing appointment setting teams of up to 16 people at a time. He scaled businesses from 40K to 240K in revenue in as fast as 30 days. He's traveled to 7 countries as a digital nomad, many of them in Latin America, and also I believe in Europe too.
Yep.
Possibly. We'll figure all that out. And he's attended multiple high ticket sales events and masterminds such as SalesCon in Miami. That was a big one. And the Nomadic Closer Mastermind with Joel Elster and Adam Paul Taylor in Medellin, Colombia. He is also a personal friend of mine. So I'd like to welcome to the podcast, Brett. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for that warm intro. It's crazy. I'm hearing those things from you, and I'm just like, man, that is actually quite a bit I did, huh? You don't think about it in the moment because you're thinking, at least for me, like, what's my next step? How I'm gonna do it? But then when you do it, it's like, wow, it's crazy. But no, I'm doing good, man. Good to see you again. I think it's been like what, 10 months already.
Yeah, it's been 10 months. And, I've been in remote sales for 1 year and I have progressed significantly throughout.
Yes.
And I do remember that when I spoke with you last, it was about, 10 or 11 months ago. And I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even have a job yet, but you really, really helped me along the way, just with that one meeting that we had and then DMing back and forth. And so seeing both of our progress is incredible because you were in a setting position and now you've moved to management. So really want to get started with this. I mean, could you give us a brief rundown of the past 3 years in remote sales and how you managed to grow yourself and move forward in your career at such a steady pace into management?
Yeah, 100%. Great question. So I mean, I've been in sales in general for a bit longer than that, a little bit over 4 years, but I was originally in, I guess you could say corporate. So I was doing insurance. Insurance business, great business to be in if you're with the right company. And I did my first 15K, 10, 15Ks there, which was great. But what I didn't like was I have to be in the States because it's very regulated, can't go out, and I only have 2 week vacation. I'm like, well, what's the point of making 8, 10 plus K if I'm only gonna have 2 week vacation? I wanna, travel the world. I wanna do other things. So long story short, I went into high ticket sales and I saw this group. I don't even know why I was on Facebook, but for some reason I was looking at Facebook groups and I found a group by Cole Gordon, Seven Figure Selling. I think it might have
Yep.
been called something else back in the day.
Yep.
And I liked it. And oh, I remember actually, I had a friend who had a marketing agency, and I helped him close deals on the side. And then through him, I eventually met Cole Gordon some group somehow. So, anyways, that's how it happened. And then I started just, having on the side things while I was working in the insurance industry. Like I would be in the office, and then I would go and at my break sometimes, just my 15, 20 minute break, go on a follow up deal and close. It's kind of crazy thinking about it now. But that's where it started. And then I was like, you know what? I can do this. It was just building the confidence to know that I could make any money, not even a lot, but just any. And when I could see that, that's when I decided to really take the leap of faith. I met one guy on a program that I was thinking of buying, and I asked him, "Hey, dude, can I just ask you like how much are you making right now?" I was like, "Oh, I just did 30K in commissions." I'm like, "Holy moly! How long you been doing this for?" He said, "I just been doing this for like 4 months." I'm like, "No way, dude. That's crazy." So
Oh,
at that point, I was just like, I gotta get all in, and so that's what I did. I went all in, and I started as a closer, then went as a setter, and then now into management.
okay. So that's a really interesting thing that you said right there and brings me and leads me up to this question. So you were a setter for a long time. Okay. So you switched from a closing position to a setting position, which is the
Yes,
opposite of what most people do and what most people aspire to do. Okay, so what led to that decision? Because that's very rare.
it is very rare, and I'm actually To be honest, I used to think, and I know a lot of people think this, they might not say it, but I used to think like setting was like beneath me, not
Yeah,
in a cocky way, like, I'm so high, but I just thought like, what? Like, I want to make the real money. Settings like for brokies, basically.
yeah,
And now I don't think that at all. Now I really think that you can make really good money because I know people who have made 10, 15K a month, even 20 as a setter. It just depends how you see it. But basically, what led me to thinking and doing it like that was number one, I didn't want to be like everyone else. I didn't want to be, oh, I'm going to be a closer, do 10, 20K, Yes, the money's great, but I feel like I just didn't want that story for me. And two, I was like, okay, what do I really want? Do I want to be a closer to be a closer, or do I want to just make X amount of money? And can I do that setting? Because if I can do that setting, why would I be a closer? If I can make 10K, I don't really care about 20K. If I go to 20K just because I'm driven, then why not just do that? Because it's less pressure, it's more volume, which ironically you get better because of the volume that's higher. Yeah, you can have probably max 13 calls a day before you feel burned out as a closer. But as a setter, dude, I had days where I literally had like 30 calls on my calendar on the day. Not all of them show up, but like it was way more consistency in that way. So that's why I got better as well faster. So I was thinking just like, instead of thinking just the money, and how fast to get the money, I thought, how can I be the best faster? How can I make that money that I want, not what marketing tells me? And, how can I create a blue ocean? Because there's not a lot of people who they're actually really good at setting. They only do setting 4 or 5 months, 6 months, then they go be a closer and then they get good at closing. But for me, I'm like, what if I actually got really freaking good, undeniable, and I also could lead them? Because you need good leaders to manage these setters because they're the front line. It affects a
yes,
lot the closing. So
yes.
I was thinking in that way, and that's what led me to stick around.
So when you said that setters are the front line, and I'm setting right now for an offer, and they're high price points, e-commerce automation with a great team. I'm very lucky to be on that team, getting training and such. And I have realized more than ever that the setters are almost more important than the closers. And I know that might sound strange because the closers collect the money. But hey, we are on the front lines. We are the first point of human to human contact. Okay. They see the marketing, then they put their information in, but we're the first people to talk to them. So we have to be the representative of the company. And if we talk like and act like a mouse and don't raise our voice, they're going to think, well, this company isn't really worth being respected. If you can't have an intelligent conversation with them, they're going to think, well, this company isn't intelligent enough to even have a conversation with me. We are the representatives of them. So when you say we're on the front lines, I would say right now, and maybe I'm biased because I'm a setter, that we're more important than the closers. But what do you
I
think
in
in
many
terms
ways.
of importance? Would setters or closers be the most important? Let's have a battle here.
I mean, I'm gonna be biased a little bit too, but I guess if I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible, eh, technically both are important. Yeah, as much as politically correct I don't want to be, but yes, they both have their importances. But I would say my argument is the setter is more important. And it's not just you're a setter, you're important. It's if you're a good setter and you've been in the game, think like 6+ months, a year plus, even if you've been a year plus, you are a unicorn basically, because that's not common at all in any industry, really. But my argument is when you become a closer, and I know because I was one, or I guess in some ways I am still sometimes closing, is people don't want to dial. They don't want to dial. They want inbound leads. They don't want to follow up. It's hard, and I get it because there's so much leads coming in. Or EODs, all this stuff that you have to. You're basically like a little business owner within a business. But if you're a good setter and you've just done it so long, it's really hard to stop doing that. Like, I don't mind doing 150 calls right now. I can do 100 calls in 30 in 1 hour. Really, like I've in my best time, my best in one day ever in any company, I did 122 sets. 122 sets working straight up 12 hours, no break, no bathroom. I didn't leave the office. It was a lot of it was because there was a competition that month and I didn't want to lose to a woman. I know it sounds crazy. a nice
Okay,
lady.
I'm a little confused here. 120 sets, because I only have like a
Yeah,
15% pickup rate. So I do
yeah, yeah,
150 calls, double dials, and I get
yeah,
about
yeah,
maybe 20 answers. So yeah, what's going on? How is this
yeah,
possible?
yeah. So this was an insurance, so it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But what we had, and the tools matter also. That I had a dialer, and it would just dial like crazy, like two, three
Okay.
times. I think it would do like simultaneously also, like
Oh
two,
yeah.
three people.
Got it. Yeah.
So it would just ring, and I would just pick up. I wouldn't press anything. So yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, I got 122 sets that one day. I think conversion rate was like 32. It was insane. But it and by the way, I'm a lot better skill wise now. I wasn't even skillful as much as that back in that day. But anyways, that skill, that trait is so engraved in you that because you have that, you don't when you do become a closer, or if you are a closer, and you have that background, you're just more powerful, you're more useful. I don't want to say that word, but yeah, you're more just valuable, honestly, if you're good at both. Because just because you've done both doesn't mean you're good at both. And you also can be in the strategic um thinking a lot more powerful to the business owner, because now I can say, hey, you know, you had 15 calls, you took 10. What happened with the other five? Oh, I don't know what to do. Okay, if I'm a elite setter, I can say I know exactly what to do. I go into go ahead level, I go into close, I go and pick my four categories: opt in, no bookings, no shows from triage, no show from demos that didn't close. I call them. I call the ones that are the warmest, and I spend my time with those first. I know exactly what I need to say. I know if I need to nurture them. I know how to nurture them. I know how to keep them accountable, make a plan. Like it's just that's so much more powerful than just someone saying, "Oh, I know how to future pace and objection handle." You know,
Yeah.
that's
What
why my argument is so strong.
and what I've noticed, setting over the past while, I've been setting for quite a while. Organization is probably 50% of it. Organization
Yes,
and
very important.
prioritization is within there as well. Because you need to know where the warmest leads are that come from. I mean, the people that say, hey, can you call me back at this specific time? I need to be going through that list as soon as the immediate speed to lead opt-ins are getting stale. And I need to focus on the reschedules oftentimes, at least the people that I've built a connection with over other categories. And when I know how to organize and go high level, you just become invaluable because now you're like the organizer of the entire team. Because the closers don't want to go in there and do anything. They really don't. I mean, it's sometimes impossible just to convince them to write notes in there, and it drives me crazy. Just put a note in there, tell me if it was a no-show or not, right? But yeah, setting is very, very important. I would almost say it
I
almost
I, I
seems like a
will
part of management. Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah. So sorry to interrupt. I will say just real quick, like if the closer's actually closing good, 30%, 40 plus, like I honestly don't really mind too much if those little things like a note or something, because I'm just like, dude, if you're just gonna close my sets, like it's all Gucci, man. But if they're not performing and they're doing that, I'm just like, bro. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's right. And I think sometimes there might be a little bit of friction because the closers might think, well, he's just a setter. Why is he telling me what to do? Hopefully, there is a good dynamic in the team at
yeah,
that time. And I think the
it's
communication
important.
between closer and setter is very important. And one thing that people may not realize, they might think about, especially people that are starting off, well, if I can book 5 appointments or 6 appointments a day, that's all. That's excellent. Well, are they really qualified leads? What's the show up rate going to be?
Yeah.
Because if you really qualify your leads properly, not just financially, right, then
Mhm.
the closing rate is going to go up for the closers and the show rate. So, wow, what an impact. And then communication between the setter and the closer, writing the correct notes. Sometimes I put in, I think if you take this angle, it will work with this person because they want more to spend more time with their family. So they want to generate passive income with their investments. And I give suggestions, and the closers give me suggestions back and they listen to my calls. It's a win win situation.
I agree.
Yeah, great. So B2B versus B2C, what are the differences? Or have you mostly been doing B2C?
I've done both. Recently, in the past couple years, have been more B2C, but I have done I would say if I had to put all the time of B2B, probably a year, 2 years B2C, 1 year total experience in B2B. Um, honestly, this might sound a bit not normal answer, but I don't think there's a huge difference. There are
Really?
differences. There's small differences, and those small differences matters, what I would say, but
Yeah.
it's not big ones. So what I mean by that is, for example, everybody's emotional. Everybody feels a certain way about something. If I talk about someone's kids, someone's goals, someone's whatever, they're gonna feel a certain way. Not just because you're sophisticated, like it doesn't matter. But I would say that the words you use, you have to be a bit different, and you really have to be careful about not sounding salesy, which to me, sounding salesy is just sounding like any other salesperson. So that's the thing. It's just more alertness of that, and also realizing that this person, has fears, bleeds bread like me. Not put him on a pedestal. Like a lot of times, it's more of like you thinking it's more than what it is, than not. That's really the big thing. I would say that in B2C, more emotional for sure. You can get away with a bit more. There, people don't know that you're trained kind of like that. You can be less skilled and get away with things with the activity, whereas and you don't have to follow up as much as a B2B. B2B, you usually have to follow a bit more, right? Because they're hard to get. They're business owners. They have a lot of things in their mind.
Yeah.
Um, you have to challenge them more. I would say a B2B guy. You wouldn't challenge them the same way as a B2C. Like, for example, if you do a cost of an action question, hey, what if you never do? What if you never get there? You wouldn't say that to B2B. They'd be like, I'll always get there. They have their pride, But a,
Yeah.
a, a better question, and I learned this from Sean Ray, would be, you know, are you willing to settle for that? Is that something you're willing to settle for? You're willing to settle for just 20K a month. I'm not. That's why I'm on this call. So like that's good. So they're not, but why not? Well, because like I have bigger dreams, whatever, right? So you don't change the fact that you don't do cost of an action. You just change the verbiage of it. So it's just little things. Um, and I would say also you have to be a little bit more like knowledgeable on what they do, because not because they want you to be smart, but because as a business owner, you really care about your business more than if you're a rep, right? It's just the reality, because you're putting more risk and you're getting more out of it. So if you know more about what your service is and their niche or whatever, that really like shows. Like if I ask a question, let's say I'm selling marketing, services as a setter, and I say, hey, right now, from your ads traffic and your organic, what is your conversion rate for each one? That's a very specific question. Most people wouldn't ask a question like that. But what that tells them, excuse me, is that okay, this guy actually like the way of thinking. He
Yeah.
has a way of thinking of marketing. Because if he's trying to break that down, and most people will say, well, my paid ads is lower. And then now I got him to admit that he either doesn't know or struggles with it. And two, and three, and the second thing is like he also knows that I know what I'm talking about. Or
Yeah.
if I'm talking to an ecom guy that wants to, scale their ecom brand to sell their physical product, I would be like, hey, what's your average order value? What's your conversion rate? You know, Most business owners actually don't know their numbers. So you got to take it at that angle, because they'll be like, oh shoot, this guy actually knows. He knows how to diagnose it. He actually answers my question. He takes time. It's just a lot more consultative approach. So that's a long-winded answer, but it's small things, but they matter.
Yeah, and when you say that, I had a sales coach, one of my mentors, man who was 40 years as a coach and leadership, John Maxwell trained and Dale Carnegie trained. And he said that,
Wow.
when you're doing B2B sales, um, you you have to turn from a salesman into a businessman. You have to know if you know more about their business
Yes.
than they do. Now, automatically they will realize, okay, this guy can actually help me. If he's asking questions I don't even know how to answer, then all of a sudden I'm a businessman. I could literally run your business, and I'm telling you that what we can do in our services will help your business run more smoothly and scale your business, so on. And what an impact that will make, eh? So I like that saying, move from a salesman to a businessman.
100%. And one last thing I'll say, and I learned this when I was in a more earlier in my career in a different industry, that especially if you sell like enterprise, okay, like 500 people, 1,000 people, you're selling to Amazon, whatever. I never sold to anyone that big, but it would still be the same principle. Um, there's multiple decision makers. You need to speak the language of that decision maker.
Yes.
And the way that I got trained on it was think about Spanish, Russian, and English. They're all different languages. They all have different culture. An English speaker that could be the manager. A Spanish speaker that could be the CTO, and then the Russian could be the owner. So they have a specific language they like to speak. CEOs, they want to know what drives. They want to know what's gonna get the money coming in. They're more like the vision. The CTO, the CFO, they're like, okay, like what's gonna make my life easier? Is this gonna make my process easier? Like they're thinking more money, they're thinking more technology. You have to speak their languages and you have to get them both on board. Um, it's something called selling above the line and selling below the line. Below the line meaning people who they're influential, but they're not the decision maker. Above the line is people who are decision makers, and obviously you need them, right? So you need to sell multiple people and know how to do that. It's just a little bit more moving parts, but still the same principles of what you would already know in a normal remote sales situation.
Yeah, so let's say if I'm speaking to a roofing company owner and he's the only person that really runs everything. He does all the finances and everything. He's wearing multiple hats for his business. But once a business expands, you can't wear all those hats at once. You need different people to wear those hats. But as when you
Right.
come in as a sales professional, you need to know how to speak to each hat. So you need to be able to wear the hats and speak differently to each person, which is kind of what I'm hearing you say. They all speak a different language and you need to be able to communicate with them.
100%. I would say in that situation though, like you're going to be speaking more of the language of Russian, meaning that the CEO, because yeah, he can have the marketing, operations, sales hat, whatever, but he's the CEO, right?
Yeah.
So like a manager, or if I'm calling to, cold call into let's say I'm cold calling a church that I want to sell software to, and it's a secretary, she's not going to think vision and, how to drive more followers to donate or something. She's just going to think like, oh, how do I do my report better? Or, whatever. But she's very influential because she talks a lot to the deacons or whoever, right? So, yeah, like in that situation, you have multiple hats, but you're still that, you know, person of the CEO, or you're that person of the admin or whatever.
Yeah. Great, great. So, yeah, there's many ways that a person can pivot in their career as a sales professional, and specifically as a remote sales professional, in the high ticket space of so many people that we know on Facebook and Instagram and so forth. What other because you went into management, did you consider any other options? And if you did, what made you choose management, setter management over the other ones?
That's a great question, man. And I wouldn't say that I thought management was better, but it was more attainable faster. It was more within my reach. So the way that I would explain it is I do consider still to this day other things, and I have a somewhat of a vision of what I'm looking for sure. For example, like things in my mind was management, was rev share, with someone, a consultation, like consulting their process on the setting side or training their closer, right? Because I can close good too. I
Yeah.
just choose to focus on setting, or maybe an equity deal. There's so many different ways that I could do it, or maybe a connector. You need people on your team, I'll connect you, right? There's so many ways you can do it, but I chose to do management because I thought about one, who am I? Who do I want to be? Who am I and who do I want to be? I don't want to be on calls all day, because not because I don't like calls, but I don't feel it's more what's more efficient, me being really good as a producer or me being good as a leader? If I can transfer the skills, to someone, and I can produce five Stevens, four, five, 10 Bretts, that'll be way more powerful than if I just have a really good, Brett on the team. It really is. Not just because of the individual number, but the culture. When you have five people who care that much about what they do, and they're energetic and they're showing it and they're driving, dude, that does a lot. I remember when I left my last company that was after 2 years, um, I left literally almost every single person said goodbye to me, like written message. And it was not because I was cool, it's because they saw how much impact I had. And I was just a setter. So for me, I thought about who I want to be, what impact I want to make, that I could make the most. And I love coaching. I love coaching because A, I've done the things that I coach. B, I really care about the results for the company. And I don't want to just, you know, be the boss. Okay. I'm not the boss. I'm the servant leader. I'm here to
Yes.
serve you. I want you to have a good relationship with me. I want you to be very good at what you do. And I want you to become something else. I want because of our relationship that you got to a level that you never thought you could even be in, you know? So that's I agree. One of my mentors told me that the moment you stop loving your people, you should stop leading them. And I genuinely love people. I love people and I love numbers. And that's a perfect place for me to be in management. So it was just a no-brainer when I started thinking about those things. And I also saw a lot of management in our space where I didn't like their style. Even ones that were good, like I met really good managers, but they weren't good leaders. They weren't good developers of people. And I was like, what if I could be them? Because I love people. I'm curious about people. I want to know about your family. You're from Canada. You're from Vancouver. You know, you came from construction. I'm fascinated by that. I love that. So we need more people like that because there's a huge difference when a leader is people focused, not just only number focused. You get a completely different side of a person. You don't get someone that just does it because they have to do it because they want to.
Yeah. And, one person which I read into quite a lot, especially at the beginning of my journey when I picked up my first sales books. One of them was first Robert Cialdini in his book called Influence, and the five
Mm,
principles in there, social proof and scarcity and all that. And another person I read into a lot was John Maxwell. And John Maxwell leadership, he constantly talks
perfect.
about servant leadership and the benefits of servant leadership as opposed to like authoritarian type leadership, which is often very destructive. Maybe it's good in the military, but on a setter team, yeah, I'm not so sure, right? And so that type of servant leadership, John Maxwell says, leaders create leaders. They don't just create followers. They want to build leaders out of everyone. And I think it takes a certain personality type to enjoy being in that position of servant leadership, like you explained. And I think that I would definitely fall into that avatar myself because I do love people and I love teaching. I love coaching. That's something I would love to get into myself. So, yeah. Um, what were some things that really surprised you about when you moved into management?
Yeah, man. Um, I guess for me is a little different, but before I answer that, one thing I want to add to the other question is that I also just didn't want to be on calls all day. You know, I wanted to, from a money perspective, I wanted to make money from the perspective of like the efforts of my team and of the company instead of just like what I closed that day, which means like, hey, what if I can get a piece of the whole pie kind of thing? So I was thinking more strategic too, you know, because I never liked being paid hourly ever, which is why I got into sales first place. I want to be paid for my value. So even if you have a commission, you know, what can I do more than commission? And that's something that I want to encourage everybody who's listening is think bigger, think big. Like that's why you make more. That's why you add more value because you thought bigger than someone else.
Yes.
Like if you're thinking, I want to be financially free, all right. But what if you say, I want generational wealth like the Vanderbilts, like the Rockefellers for 4 or 5 generations, Medici family from 1600. Wow, that's a huge different like skill set, resources, and planning now. Anyways, I wanted to just add that super small. Um, to your question, what
Yeah,
was I
so
surprised
yeah,
about?
no, I liked what you just said there too. That was a great addition because the mindset is so important. When you think big, then you go big and you work harder and you strive for those things. And I think it's very important to have that. And ambitious people, sometimes we bite off more than we can chew, but we have to fail before we succeed, right? So,
That's true.
yeah, what surprised you once you got into management?
Yeah. So when I got to management, I was surprised by the level of strategic thinking. Like, if you're an elite in anything, and closer, setter, specifically in our industry, you can't just, for example, as a setter, you can't. Most people would say, "What's a setter?" You're like, "Oh, you're just qualifying people that are a good fit." Okay. I mean, if that's the only thing you think, you ain't no elite setter. I can tell you right now.
Yeah.
Like, we're not here to just slap people on the board. Um, what I mean by that is you got to be, yes, qualified people, making sure that you're creating opportunities, but you also want to move opportunities forward and ensure they close, right? And those two parts, that's like more than what the normal setter does. Most setters, they set and forget, make more calls, set. But elite closers, they're like asking the closers, hey, how did the call go? What's the next steps? Why didn't it close? When is the next follow up? Did you do a follow up? And then they get better at communicating that to them. They make their notes not just in a way where they closer knows what to expect, but they're excited for it as well. Like they're almost basically copywriting it, right? Because if you can communicate good the details and you get them excited, that changes the whole thing. I challenge people as well. Hey, this person, the wife is a decision maker, but she doesn't have the money, but she said it's okay. Oh, I don't want to close. I don't want to. You got to reschedule. No, I'm not going to. You better take that. Take it like respectfully challenging, and then they closes. So there's a lot of things that you have to do to be really in anything, but setting, for example, and it takes strategic thinking to do that. But at the management side, it's more. And I was surprised, but I guess I wasn't like shocked, but I anticipated it, but when you go through it, it's different from when your anticipation as well. And I'm just like, dang, like I gotta think about SOPs and I gotta make an argument with my numbers based on the numbers they have now. Or if I have a new account, do I change everything or do I keep everything and just adjust to it? How do I drive people who have the different schedules of one that works 15 hours, one that works 30, one that works 40? This person doesn't like this. Like it's just so much to like strategically think about. And then, it's halfway through the month. I have to plan for the next 3 months or the next month, you know, um, because I work with an agency right now, like a very amazing agency. Like they want to have X amount of, new accounts each, month or whatever or quarter. How do I, in my leadership, adapt to that as well? How do I think ahead of time? Not only how can I drive results now for the accounts I have, but like the new ones I will have. And it's just a lot of strategic thinking and communicating to people and making sure they're on the same page. And that's really and it's fast too. You cannot wait, as a setter or closer, if you don't do your EOD, maybe nobody tells you for a day or two. But as a leader, people notice very fast when you didn't do something. So it's a lot of like really higher standards than even as an elite rep you have higher standards, strategic thinking, and you really, I would say, you really need to care more. You cannot just not care. I
Yeah.
think that's why it's actually John C. Maxwell who said that phrase I said about the moment you stop loving your people, you should stop leading them. Like
Yeah.
it's just really hard to do your job good as a leader if you just don't care as much. Because if you don't care as much, you're not going to be fast. You're not going to be trying to improve. You're not going to care about their lives. You're not going to care about systems. So just that level that's required, I guess, of higher standards and strategic thinking.
And now, as a setting manager, you move into a position where at first, as a setter, you're responsible for your own results, for the process that you have and the outcomes that you get. And now you move into a position where you're responsible for other people's results because you're the one managing them. So if they're not doing their job properly, it's a reflection of you because you're the manager. How do you handle, what's your perspective on that? And how do you handle a type of pressure that you may feel that comes from that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there definitely is pressure, and I wouldn't say, and I really encourage anybody who considers doing management or, anything in that capacity, like don't shy away from that because who you become in the process is more valuable than, you know, what you get out of it, which is, money or reputation. It really is. The process shapes you before it rewards you. And for me, I would say that sorry, I got blanked out. What was the question again?
Yeah, yeah. So I was talking about that's funny because the same thing happens to me as well. It is Saturday. Yeah, so it's about the pressure. how do you handle the pressure of the responsibility all falling on top of you as being a
Ah,
manager?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot easier to take it on when you've already decided beforehand what you're gonna do with it. And what I mean by that is I intentionally wanted to be in this position and I thought I know it's gonna be more, I know it's gonna require more, and it's gonna require something of me that I don't have now, 100%, and I'm okay with that. You know, that's something you a lot of people they ask for things, but they're not willing to go through things. And you gotta also, and it's part of it is accepting that, hey, it will be more pressure, and I'm okay with that. And two is also knowing that that's normal. It's so normal. Okay, there is this pyramid. I went to a conference this year. This pyramid where at the bottom it was like positions of a company, and then the pressure to it. The lowest one was employee 9 to 5. It's like yes, there's pressure, but it's like very low. The second one was salesperson. It's kind of funny because it kind of can be an employee still, but it's more pressure, right? And then the third one was a sales leader, which is where I am now. And then after that is a director, then a C level, and then and then owner founder. So as you go up, more responsibility. I know there's more pressure. It's just part of the game. So I accept it, and I know it's normal, and that helps me to be okay with it. And also on top of that, loving the people that I work with,
Yeah.
my coworkers, the owner, the person that is on my team, that setter closer. I know about them. I know their goals. I know their insecurities. I know what they like in terms of their I don't want to say love language, but I guess I'll say love language. Do they like to be encouraged, praised? Do they like to be gifted something? Like those things are just as important because when I know that about them and I care about them, I'm willing to go through the fire each and every day, you know?
Yeah.
So that's how I handle pressure is knowing that I have a good team around me. I accepted it before. I know it's a normal thing. And anything, I'm a person of faith, and anything that is outside of my control, I just say, you know what, God, this is what I can do. And the rest is up to you if you can help me,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah.
That's how
You
I see
have to
it.
be able to let things go, right? So that you don't put the weight of other people's problems on your shoulders because you cannot be responsible for other people's incompetence. So that must be a tricky scenario. You kind of need to know how to deal with that psychologically. So I'm sure that there's definitely a learning curve behind that. And also one thing I'm going to mention is that because I just recently came into a company, it's about a month and a half ago, and I'm doing quite well there. Now, when I first came in our first meeting, and I started setting appointments, and it was an old list. I was setting appointments from people that ghosted 6 months ago, right?
Oh,
Yeah, so I was doing pretty good. And first thing I said in the first meeting is to the closers here, I'm open to any type of constructive criticism or feedback from you guys because I want to make sure that when I'm sending them over to you, right, what are they saying, which may be a reflection of something that I could be doing right or wrong in my setting process, even though it's only a 10-minute call. And I had situations, just because I said that, I had situations where the closer would contact me, and this closer has coached setting teams himself before in the past, and he's been in sales for years and years. And he basically coached me on the phone for half an hour about going through the call, listening to the call, telling me this is what you did, this is where see. Listen to this part because then you could have disqualified her and it would have been much better and would have been an energy saver and a time saver. So now, just because I'm putting myself out there and I'm on a good team, think of that as a win-win situation. I mean, and also I like putting in that extra 10% to show that I'm a person that is here to get results for the people and I'm here to be a team player. And for anyone watching, that's what I would recommend. And I just said this on a networking call. If you're the person that's willing to go into one corner of the CRM and organize something that has been disorganized for 3 months and no one wants to touch, everyone is going to look at it and go, oh, wow. He goes the extra mile and he gets stuff done. And it will definitely make you stand out.
I 100% agree with that. 100% agree. And I can't tell you how many awesome things have happened by not just being open, like you said, to constructive criticism, but publicly saying that to people. Like I remember, I remember you had Eli Wild on here. I got in touch with Eli Sanchez and Eli Wild through doing something like that on my past offer. One long story short, I said I needed help with something. Someone told me, and then one thing led to another, and we got connected. And I actually was working with them for a little bit last year. But yeah, it's so important to be open and then public with it. And one thing I want to add, just to the other question. Sorry, I keep doing that.
Yeah, you're good.
That I think is important to say is with pressure is having things that you can trust no matter what happens. Like you imagine you have like an iron rod in front of you. You can just hold on to that, even if everything else is dark and you just see a little bit of light. You hold on to what you know you're good at, you know is true, values and principles. I know if I treat people good, they're gonna treat me good. I know that if I, leave people in a better space than where I found them, I know that if I don't know everything and I can be vulnerable and with people, and that's not weakness, that's strength. Like certain principles like that help me so much to handle pressure, trust in my systems. I know that if I see this number of volume and this number of triage taken and this, triage just to set and this close rate, that I need to focus on these things. This means that people aren't doing this. And I know that if there's a tough month and we didn't hit our number like 100% or we didn't go as much as growth, I know what to look at in my systems, in my principles, in my whatever, that I holding onto that iron rod to talk to the business owner about, so that way it doesn't look like I'm clueless. So just really trusting what you know is true and having that already set in place, because a lot of things can go wrong, but there's things that will never go wrong, which is like the principles, the systems, things like that when it's already proven. So just don't forget about the things that you know work.
Got it. Got it. Stick to the process. Yeah. And now let's talk about networking a little bit because you just spoke about Eli Wild, and I believe that you would have met him, seen him at SalesCon in Miami as well, right? Is that
I
SalesCon?
did act.
JD
I
Daly, Nick Ely, a whole Taylor O'Hara was there, a whole ton of people. What was that like?
ton of people. It was amazing. I actually saw Eli by accident first on a different conference in the beginning of that month, at the Vault conference, which was not high ticket sales, it was more of an entrepreneur. And he was just like, it was just so random. I just saw him next to the closer.io booth. There was a closer.io booth. And I was like, Eli? And he was like, yeah. And he's like, we were just connected. And then I saw him again at SalesCom, and it was really cool. I was seeing everybody, Taylor O'Hare, you mentioned Sean Ray, Payne Welch, all these guys. And I think the coolest thing outside of just meeting, people who you basically have a relationship online with is the impact that those leaders had. Like I saw that from Peyton came Dean, came, all these people. From Matt Ryder came all these people. From JD came all these people. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, dude, this is so cool. Like think, how many people are gonna watch this podcast or that follow your journey that you are gonna influence that maybe you might not know. And it's such a very like influence based type of industry. And this wasn't even that long ago that Dean wasn't where Dean is, that Peyton is where, not Peyton, other Taylor's where he is. It was maybe like a year or two ago. So that was so cool to see in person. And I can totally say that when you meet someone that you've been talking to online in person, it just really electrifies the relationship more for sure. It
Yeah.
makes it more stronger.
Yeah, and I experienced the same thing with many people I met online. And then when I went down to Medellin, Colombia, I met them in person. And that is a very, very interesting experience. And I was living down there with JD and a few other people from Undeniable Closer as well. And there's a lot of digital nomads in Medellin. I mean, a lot of
A
remote sales
lot, man.
professionals. Yeah, so how do you think that networking, played a role in the advancement of your career? Were there specific connections that you made that just changed everything?
Oh, absolutely. It was a huge, huge importance in it. Like, it's absolutely critical. Like, the phrase of it's not what you know, it's who you know is very true. Now, that doesn't mean that you should be incompetent, but another phrase that's also true is that it's better to be prepared for an opportunity and not have one than to have an opportunity and not be prepared.
Yeah.
So you definitely need both. But what a networking did for me was um it was basically like the key to open opportunity. Yeah. Like the skills is to show, excuse me, that you're capable of something, but you still need the opportunity. And there's a lot of opportunities that are hidden, that they're not public. So it wasn't even about any opportunity, but the best opportunities. Like, for example, I didn't know that, Eli needed help with the setter or was trying to get a setter or something. I knew it because of my connections, right? With this one person I met. And and I only knew it because I brought it up. I brought up, hey, I'm looking for, improving my skills. I'm even willing to work for someone who's good. And that's how it came up, right? So super important because you never know what that person can offer, and they never know how to help you either in exchange. If they don't know what you need, they can't read your mind. So being able to get access to that hidden market of opportunities made it faster. Having the right people who trust. There's a book called Speed of Trust, and when you can have someone's trust, you borrow their trust, and they speak for you, and they trust that person. It just makes it more faster because people really the only reason they have barriers to opportunities or knowledge or relationships, it's because of trust. If you trusted everybody, why wouldn't you be their friends? It's
Yeah.
just it's just no point, right? You'd probably be everybody's friend. If everybody trusted each other, there'd be no jails probably. Everybody just be like out in the fields, kumbaya. But the reality is not like that. But I would say trust was a big part of why networking helped me, get there faster,
Yeah.
and then being able to have access to those hidden markets and also access to the way of thinking. There's people who they think so different and they've done so much like things that you wouldn't be able to if you didn't have that network to bounce off ideas. You know the phrase two heads is better than one?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, your network is like the other head. So that's super important. That for me was the reason I got because I went from working with Eli, for example, and then I could use that now as like, hey, I work with Eli and I have him on my WhatsApp and we actually talk, right? I talk a bit more to Sanchez, but like it's now I can say that and it's true and it does stand out. And now it's like how can I say like a springboard for the next thing and the next thing, and it just becomes a snowball effect. Networking becomes a snowball effect more faster than you think. I know you know this very well, and so little people do it that it really stands out when you do it.
Yeah. And I just said to someone the other day, networking is like it's not going to the store and buying products, it's growing your own produce. You have to nurture it. But the
100%.
products that you grow yourself will always taste better than any type of products you buy from the store, right? Now, yeah, there's one last question I always ask everyone that comes on this podcast. Really important because there's a lot of beginners that are coming to watch this podcast. There are a lot of people that are trying to understand how to network. A lot of people coming from Undeniable Closer Mastermind and people that are in the beginning of their sales journey. And they may feel lost, they may feel doubtful, they may feel as if like, I don't know if this is for me and I feel like quitting. What words of advice or words of encouragement would you have for them to help them stick with their journey?
Um, there's a lot of things I would say to be honest, but what I would say is, huh, what I would say is you need to know why you're doing something. Like it doesn't need to be super deep, but you really need to know why you're doing something. Um, and remind yourself a lot about that. You can't just know it one time and then put it in your journal and look at it 6 months. Like you need to have it all the time and use that when you feel that way because you will feel that way a lot when you're doing something you've never done before, you don't know how to do it, and you've been burned before, right? So I would say have your list of things that can kick you back into gear. Like for me, my list of things, for example, is like you're much closer than you think you are. It's right around the corner, Brent. It's literally right around the corner. When you think you're about to, you want to quit, it's literally the next day something happens. It does happen so many times in dating and networking and business. Another thing is like, what happens if you just give up? You go back to the same thing you were doing. Like that
Yeah.
was the whole point, right? Like there's no point in going back to there. There's a reason why the front window in the car is bigger than the back window, right? It's because you gotta be looking forward. But little things like that help me. And then of course being around people who, even if they're not all crushing it, like an Eli, for example, but people who are working towards it. Have people who are working towards something. Some are crushing, some are like, they're just never give up because that is infectious. That's contagious. Being
Yeah.
around the right environment, having reasons for never giving up and reminding yourself of it, and then also, um, no, I would say that's pretty much it. Honestly, that's the biggest thing. Yeah, and not thinking um immediate gratification. Not thinking immediate gratification.
Yeah. Trust in the process, as opposed to the outcome is something that I'm consistently trying to do every day with my own written exercises to help myself get over the frustrations of not being able to set some appointments. And it's helping a lot. Yeah. But Brett, I really appreciate that you came on the show. I think we went over a number of topics which are very interesting. I think a lot of people are going to get a great amount of value from this. And where are you right now, by the way? What country are you in?
Yeah, that's always the golden question. I'm in Spain right now in Madrid, so I'm actually, ironically, I'll be visiting someone from my last stop for tomorrow just to catch up in the different city in Valencia. But yeah, I'm in Madrid, and then I'll be back in next month in Medellin, actually.
Oh, really? Okay, okay. All right. Well, you know what, Brett? It was so great to have you on the show. And in the next 3 years, who knows where we're both going to be? Maybe I'll be a manager, and then you're going to be a CEO. Right? We'll see
Hey
what
man,
happens.
you can do whatever you want. A lot of people underestimate what they can do in a few years, and they overestimate in the short. The famous phrase is so true. Yeah, man, I'm excited to see how you go.
Perfect,
Thank you.
perfect. All right, we'll just wave goodbye to the audience, and then we'll stop the recording.
See you
Bye.
guys. Take care.